4 people. 4 moments where everything had gone wrong. A woman in a temple, weeping so hard she could not make a single sound. A prophet on a mountain, outnumbered 450 to 1. A servant in a foreign palace, 1 wrong expression away from execution. And 2 men in the lowest cell of a Roman prison, backs torn open, feet locked in wood, in the middle of the night. 4 prayers, and after each one, history turned. This is not a video about prayer techniques. This is not a lecture on the theology of intercession. This is not a list of steps that guarantee God will do what you want. This is a look at 4 specific moments when specific people prayed in specific impossible situations, and the God of the universe answered in ways that rewrote the story of the world. One of these 4 prayers was prayed in total silence. No sound, no words spoken aloud. Just a woman's lips moving in the dark, and God heard every single one. We will get to her. But first, you need to understand something about the kind of prayer that changes history. It is almost never prayed from a position of strength. Every person in this video was at the end of something when they prayed. The end of their patience, the end of their plan, the end of their rope. And what happened next had nothing to do with their eloquence, their theology degree, or how many years they had been religious. What happened next had everything to do with the God on the other side of the prayer. Stay with me. The year is somewhere around the 11th century before Christ. The place is Shiloh, a hill town in central Canaan, where the Ark of the Covenant rests inside a tent sanctuary. Twice a year, families make the journey here to worship and offer sacrifice. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing 1,000 years later, describes Shiloh as one of the most significant worship sites in Israel's early history, a place where ordinary people came to stand before an extraordinary God. One family arrives. The husband's name is Elkanah. He has 2 wives. The first wife's name is Peninnah. She has children. The second wife's name is Hannah. Hannah has none. Every year they come to Shiloh. Every year Peninnah finds new ways to remind Hannah of what she does not have. The text says Peninnah provoked her year after year. Not once, not twice. Year after year, until Hannah wept and could not eat. Elkanah tries to comfort her. He says something well-meaning and slightly tone-deaf that husbands have been saying ever since. Am I not better to you than 10 sons? He means it kindly. It does not help. Hannah gets up from the table. She walks to the entrance of the sanctuary, and she does something that the priest Eli, sitting in his chair by the doorpost, has apparently never seen before. She prays. But no sound comes out. Her lips move. Her body shakes. The tears are running down her face. But the grief is so deep that it has gone past the point where words work. She is not performing. She is not composing a theologically impressive prayer. She is pouring out her soul before God. Eli watches from his chair and draws the worst possible conclusion. He walks over and tells her to put away her wine. She is drunk in a holy place. Hannah looks up at him, and the woman who could not speak a moment ago finds words now. No, my lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have not been drinking. I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Eli pauses. And then the old priest says something that changes her life. Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant your petition. He had not heard her prayer. He did not know what the petition was, but God did. Hannah had been asking for 1 child. What she could not know was that the child she was asking for would become the prophet Samuel, the man who would anoint Saul, the man who would anoint David, the man whose voice would shape the entire monarchy of Israel for a generation. 1 silent prayer, lips moving in the dark, and God heard every word. Here's what most people miss. Eli could not hear Hannah's prayer. The priest sitting 10 feet away could not make out a single syllable, but the God she was praying to heard it all. Every grief she could not articulate, every year of waiting compressed into 1 shaking, silent moment before the altar. If you have ever prayed a prayer you could not find words, for you are in good company. Move forward 2 centuries. The northern kingdom of Israel has turned from God so thoroughly that drought has covered the land for 3 years. No rain, dried up rivers, famine. The man responsible for announcing that drought is a prophet named Elijah. By the time we reach 1 Kings chapter 18, he has arranged a confrontation on top of Mount Carmel. On one side, 450 prophets of Baal, the storm god, the god of rain. On the other side, Elijah. 1 man. The terms are simple. Each side prepares a sacrifice. Whichever God answers by fire, that is the real God. The prophets of Baal go first. They pray from morning until noon. They shout. They cut themselves. They dance around the altar. Nothing. Elijah starts making suggestions. Maybe their God is busy. Maybe he is on a journey. Maybe he is sleeping. The Hebrew carries unmistakable sarcasm. Elijah is the only man on this mountain who is not afraid. Then it is his turn. He rebuilds the altar, 12 stones, one for each tribe. He has the sacrifice soaked with water 3 times until the trench around it is full. Then he prays. The prayer takes about 20 seconds. He asks God to make it known that he is the God of Israel and that this people might turn their hearts back to him. Fire falls. Fire that consumes the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the dust, and every drop of water in the trench. Gone. The people fall on their faces. And then here is the part nobody tells you. Within a week, this same Elijah is hiding under a broom tree in the wilderness, asking God to let him die. "It is enough," he says. "I have had enough, Lord." He is exhausted. He is afraid. He is done. And God does not rebuke him. God sends an angel, twice, with food and water. "Arise and eat. The journey is too great for you." The Hebrew word used here is chazak, to take hold, to be strengthened by something placed in your hands from outside yourself, not by willpower, not by pulling yourself together, by a provision that comes from beyond you. Elijah prayed in triumph on a mountain. Then he prayed in collapse under a tree. God answered both prayers. The distance between your greatest victory and your deepest crash can be shorter than you think, and God already knows that about you. The year is 446 before Christ. Jerusalem has been in ruins for 140 years. The walls are rubble. The gates are burned. A man named Nehemiah hears this news in the Persian capital of Susa, where he works as the personal cupbearer to King Artaxerxes, one of the most powerful rulers in the ancient world. For 4 months after hearing about Jerusalem, Nehemiah fasts and prays in private. He does not rush to the king. He does not send a petition. He prays. Then one day the king looks at him and notices something. "Why does your face look sad? You are not sick. This is sadness of heart." The text says Nehemiah was very much afraid. Because in the Persian court, showing the king your grief, implying that life in his magnificent kingdom was insufficient, could be read as disloyalty, as an offense. The king asks, "What is your request?" And in the space between that question and Nehemiah's answer, in that single unscripted breath, Nehemiah prays. He does not close his eyes. He does not ask for a moment. He prays in the gap. A lifetime of 4 months of private prayer compressed into one silent second before a king. And then he answers. He asks permission to go to Jerusalem and rebuild the walls. The king grants it. Letters of safe passage, timber from the royal forest, military escort, everything Nehemiah needs flows from one breath of prayer in a dangerous room. Nehemiah himself writes it down this way. "So I prayed to the God of heaven, and I said to the king, the prayer and the action are one continuous sentence." Not prayer instead of action. Prayer as the hinge that makes the action possible. The walls of Jerusalem were rebuilt in 52 days. Now watch what happens next. The year is approximately 51 after Christ. The city is Philippi, a Roman colony in what is now northern Greece. A man named Paul and his companion Silas have been seized by a mob, dragged before the city magistrates, stripped, beaten with wooden rods, and thrown into prison. Not the outer cell, the inner cell. Feet in stocks, backs open from the beating. It is midnight. You have been in a midnight that had nothing to do with the clock. The kind where the silence is louder than anything. Where everything you worked for has collapsed. Where the thing you were sure God told you to do has led you here, to a locked room with no way out. Paul and Silas are in that midnight, beaten, chained, in the dark, and they start to sing, not crying, not demanding an explanation, singing hymns. The Greek word is hymneo, songs of praise directed to God. The other prisoners are listening. This is not passive acceptance. You cannot sing praise at midnight without deciding deliberately, consciously deciding that God is still good even when the evidence in the room says otherwise. Eusebius, the 3rd century church historian, notes that the early church deliberately practiced midnight prayer as a way of declaring that darkness did not have the final word. Paul and Silas were not doing something random. They were doing something the church would repeat for centuries. And then the earth moves. An earthquake violent enough to shake the foundations of the prison. Every door swings open. Every chain falls loose. Every prisoner is free. The jailer wakes. He sees the open doors. He draws his sword because in Roman law, a guard whose prisoners escaped was executed in their place. Better to do it himself. Paul shouts across the dark, "Do not harm yourself, we are all here." They did not run, not one of them, and the jailer falls at Paul's feet and asks the question that has echoed across 2,000 years of church history: what must I do to be saved? That night, the jailer and his entire household are baptized. This is what the midnight prayer unleashed. Not just an escape, a family. A church in Philippi that would receive one of Paul's most tender letters, a letter full of the word joy, written, by the way, from another prison. Your midnight is not the end of the story. It is sometimes where the story begins. 4 prayers, 4 impossible rooms, and a God who showed up in every single one. Here is what you take with you. Prayer is not what you do when everything else has failed. Hannah did not pray as a last resort. She prayed because she knew the God in that sanctuary was the only one who could do what no human being could. Prayer is not the backup plan. It is the first move of someone who understands what kind of God they are dealing with. God hears what no one else can hear. Eli could not make out a word, Hannah said. The king of Persia did not know what passed between Nehemiah and God in that single breath. The prisoners in Philippi heard singing, but they could not hear what was happening beyond the walls. You do not need the right words, the right posture, or the right level of faith. You need only to turn toward the one who already knows. And carry this one. Your midnight is not the end of the story. Elijah under the broom tree was not finished. Paul and Silas in the inner cell were not forgotten. Hannah weeping at Shiloh was not invisible. The God who heard a silent prayer in a tent sanctuary, who answered a 7-word prayer with fire from heaven, who worked in the gap between a question and an answer, who shook the foundations of a Roman prison at midnight, that God has not stopped listening. Which of these 4 prayers hit closest to where you are right now? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you are in a midnight season, if the chains feel real and the door feels locked, take this with you. Paul and Silas did not sing because everything was fine. They sang because they knew the story was not over.